Queen Zareth studied Jake Morrison across the crystal expanse of her throne room, while his simple question echoed in her mind. What did she hope to gain by ruling over people who did not want to be ruled? For 3,000 years, she had never questioned the purpose of conquest, because the answer seemed obvious. The Veltar were superior, therefore they had the right to dominate lesser species. We conquer because we are perfect, she said, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. We have evolved beyond the weaknesses that plague primitive species. It is our destiny to rule the galaxy and bring order to chaos. Jake nodded thoughtfully, as if considering her explanation with genuine interest. That makes sense from your perspective. But what happens when you encounter something you cannot conquer? Something that does not fit into your understanding of superiority and weakness? Nothing can resist Veltar power, Zareth replied automatically. We have crushed every species that dared to oppose us. We have conquered worlds with technology beyond your imagination and defeated civilizations that spanned entire star clusters. And yet here I am standing in your throne room, refusing to be dominated by your psychic abilities. Jake pointed out with a slight smile. I am just a human captain with no special powers or advanced technology. If your superiority is absolute, then how am I able to resist you? A question struck at the heart of everything Zareth believed about herself and her people. She rose from her throne and walked closer to the human captain, while her skin shifted through confused patterns of color. When she was close enough to touch him, she reached out again with her psychic abilities and encountered the same impossible resistance. His mind was like trying to move a mountain with her bare hands. Not because it was heavily defended or technologically shielded, but because it simply chose not to be moved. The sensation was both humbling and terrifying for someone who had never met an obstacle she could not overcome. You are an anomaly, she said. One unusual human does not disprove thousands of years of Veltar dominance. Then let me ask you something else, Jake replied. What happens to your perfect species when they face a challenge that cannot be solved through superior genetics or advanced technology? What do the Veltar do when they encounter a problem that requires growth and adaptation rather than existing? Strengths? Zareth paused because she had never considered such a scenario. The Veltar had been genetically perfect for millennia. They did not need to grow or adapt because they had already reached the pinnacle of evolutionary development. Their bodies were immortal, their minds were powerful, and their technology was unmatched. We do not face such challenges, she said. Perfection means having no weaknesses to overcome. But that is exactly your weakness, Jake said gently. You have become so perfect that you cannot become more than what you are. You have reached a plateau and convinced yourselves it is a mountain peak. The human captain gestured toward the crystal walls around them that displayed views of space and the Veltar fleet. Your ships are magnificent and your abilities are impressive. But what happens when you meet a problem that cannot be solved by force or psychic power? What do you do when the universe presents you with something completely new? Queen Zareth felt something she had never experienced before. Doubt, not about her power or her empire, but about the fundamental assumptions that had guided her entire existence. She walked back to her throne and sank into its crystal embrace, while her mind raced through implications she had never considered. You are suggesting that genetic perfection is a limitation rather than an advantage, she said slowly. I am suggesting that perfection is the end of growth, Jake replied. When you believe you have reached the ultimate state of being, you stop trying to become something more. You stop learning and adapting and pushing beyond your boundaries. And humans continue to grow because you are imperfect. We continue to grow because we refuse to accept that growth has limits, Jake corrected. Every time someone tells us that something is impossible, we take that as a challenge to prove them wrong. Every time the universe tries to kill us, we find new ways to survive. We never stop becoming more than we were. Zareth closed her eyes and thought about the ancient texts that described the mythical peak. She had always assumed it meant reaching some ultimate form of evolutionary superiority. But Jake was describing something entirely different. A state of being where the journey mattered more than the destination. "Show me," she said suddenly. "Prove to me that human adaptability is superior to Veltar perfection." Jake looked around. The throne room with its displays of overwhelming military power and technological mastery. "You want me to demonstrate human capabilities while I am completely at your mercy, aboard your flagship surrounded by your empire? Yes, convince me that I should not simply destroy your species and continue my conquest of the galaxy. Show me why imperfect humans deserve to exist alongside perfect Veltar." Jake was quiet for a long moment while he considered her challenge. Then he smiled with the same calm confidence he had shown throughout their encounter. "I cannot prove that humans are superior to the Veltar, but I can prove that we offer something your perfect empire lacks." "Which is?" "The ability to dream of something better and make that dream real. You have conquered 17 star systems and created a stable empire that will probably last for thousands of years. That is an impressive achievement. But what comes next? What do the Veltar aspire to become once they have conquered the entire galaxy?" Queen Zareth realized she had no answer to that question. The Veltar had spent millennia focused on conquest and domination, but had never considered what would happen after victory was complete. What did perfect beings do when there were no more challenges to overcome? "Humans dream of things that do not exist yet," Jake continued. "We imagine better ways to live and work and explore the universe. Then we pour our lives into making those dreams come true, even when everyone tells us we are chasing impossible fantasies. Give me an example." "Right now, human scientists are working on technology that would allow us to travel between galaxies. Most experts say it is impossible, but we keep trying anyway. Human philosophers debate questions about consciousness and meaning that may never have final answers, but we pursue them because the search itself has value. Human artists create beauty for no reason, except that beauty makes life worth living." Zareth felt her worldview shifting like tectonic plates beneath an earthquake. Everything she had believed about strength and evolution and the nature of power was being challenged by this ordinary human, who refused to acknowledge that challenges could not be overcome. "What if we worked together?" she asked suddenly. "What?" "If the Veltar shared their knowledge and technology with humans while learning from your capacity for growth and adaptation." Jake's eyes lit up with genuine excitement for the first time since their conversation began. "Now you are thinking like a human. Instead of asking who should rule over whom, you are asking how we can both become more than we are separately." "Queen." Zareth stood from her throne and made a decision that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. "I am calling off the invasion. The Veltar Empire will not conquer human space. Instead, we will propose an alliance between equals. Your generals will not understand that decision," Jake warned. "Then I will teach them what you have taught me," Zareth replied. "That true strength comes not from dominating others, but from growing beyond what you thought possible. That evolution never ends for those brave enough to keep reaching for something higher." As Jake Morrison prepared to return to human space as the first ambassador between their species, Queen Zareth looked out at the stars and felt something she had forgotten was possible, the desire to become more than she was. The human captain had given her the greatest gift imaginable. He had shown her that even perfect beings could still learn to dream. 3 months had passed since Queen Zareth watched the human ship escape from certain death, and her fascination with these strange creatures had grown into an obsession. She ordered her fleet to remain hidden at the edges of human space while She studied their behavior through carefully staged disasters that appeared to be natural accidents. The first test came when she directed a massive solar flare toward the human colony world of New Denver. The electromagnetic pulse should have destroyed their power grid and left 50,000 colonists to freeze in the darkness of space. But the humans responded with the same impossible determination she had witnessed aboard the Discovery. Dr. Rachel Stone worked for 6 days without sleep to modify their fusion reactors into emergency power sources. She literally used her own body as a test subject to determine safe radiation levels, while other colonists built makeshift shelters from mining equipment. When their food supplies ran low, the colonists ate processed algae from their water, recycling systems, and somehow managed to keep everyone alive until rescue ships arrived. Zareth watched from her hidden flagship as humans refused to accept death, even when facing impossible odds. Their bodies were weak and their technology was primitive, but their minds seemed capable of finding solutions that should not exist. The second test involved a space station called Harmony Station that orbited a gas giant with 300 civilian researchers aboard. Zareth used gravitational manipulation to destabilize the station's orbit and send it falling toward the planet below. The humans had perhaps 12 hours before atmospheric entry would destroy them completely. Engineer Tom Bradley took command when the station's captain was injured in the initial crisis. He organized work crews to dismantle entire sections of the station and rebuild them into heat shields using nothing but emergency tools and salvaged materials. When their computers failed, he calculated re-entry angles by hand while other humans welded support beams with sparking torches in zero gravity. The station broke apart during atmospheric entry, exactly as physics predicted. But the humans had built survival pods that rode the pieces down to the planet's surface like meteors of metal and hope. 293 people survived what should have been certain death because they refused to give up even when mathematics said they were doomed. Queen Zareth found herself studying ancient Veltar texts with new understanding. The stories about the Peak described beings who could transcend normal limitations through willpower alone. She had always assumed this meant some kind of psychic ability or genetic mutation, but now she realized the truth was far simpler and far more profound. The humans were not physically superior to other species. They were not mentally advanced or technologically gifted, but they possessed something that our perfect Veltar people had lost long ago. They had the absolute refusal to accept defeat, no matter how impossible their situation became. General Kethvar, she called to her military advisor, prepare a capture mission. I want to meet one of these humans face to face. The general's skin flickered with surprise at this unusual command. Your Majesty, surely you do not wish to expose yourself to such primitive creatures. They carry diseases, and their minds are chaotic. It would be beneath your dignity to speak with them directly. Zareth turned from her study of human behavior patterns and fixed her subordinate with a stare that made him step backward. You'll do as I command. I want the human called Jake Morrison brought aboard this ship alive and unharmed. Arrange for his vessel to be captured during what appears to be a routine patrol. 2 weeks later, Jake Morrison found himself standing in the crystal throne room of an alien vessel beyond anything human science could imagine. The walls seemed to be made of living light that shifted between colors, while the floor felt solid but looked like walking on frozen starlight. At the center of the vast chamber sat a throne carved from what appeared to be a single massive diamond. Queen Zareth studied the human captain with intense curiosity. He was smaller than she expected, with brown hair and ordinary features that would be unremarkable among his own species. His body showed the weakness typical of short-lived mammals, and his mind lacked any trace of psychic ability. By every measure of evolutionary advancement, he should have been insignificant. But when Jake met her gaze, she felt something unprecedented. His mind did not cower before her psychic presence as all other species did. He showed no fear despite being completely at her mercy aboard a ship that could destroy his entire world. Most remarkably, he seemed genuinely curious about her, rather than terrified. "You are Queen Zareth, I assume," Jake said with calm politeness. "Your ship is impressive. I have never seen technology that integrates crystal matrices with energy fields so seamlessly." The Queen blinked in surprise. She had expected begging or threats or desperate attempts to bargain for his life. Instead, this human was complimenting her engineering while standing in the throne room of the galaxy's most feared predator. "You are not afraid," she observed. "Should I be?" Jake asked. "You could have killed me already if that was your intention. Since I am still alive, I assume you want something else. Probably information about human capabilities or weaknesses. I am willing to talk if you are interested in honest conversation." Zareth leaned forward in her throne, with fascination growing in her crystalline features. She reached out with her psychic abilities to read his thoughts and emotions, but encountered something she had never felt before. His mind was not shielded by technology or protected by mental training. It simply refused to be dominated. The sensation was like trying to grasp water with her hands. Every time her consciousness touched his thoughts, they seemed to slip away, not through resistance, but through sheer stubborn independence. His mind essentially said no to her intrusion, and somehow that was enough to block abilities that could crush entire civilizations. "How are you doing that?" she asked with genuine wonder in her voice. "Doing what?" Jake replied. "I am just standing here talking to you. You are blocking my psychic abilities. No species has ever been able to resist Veltar mental domination without technological assistance or genetic modification. Yet you show no effort and no strain. How is this possible?" Jake considered the question with the same calm thoughtfulness he had shown throughout their encounter. "I suppose I just do not want you reading my mind without permission. It seems rude and invasive, so I choose not to let you do it." The simplicity of his answer struck Zareth like a physical blow. He was not using advanced techniques or hidden powers. He was simply exercising free will in a way that made her supposedly superior abilities meaningless. "Tell me about your escape from the asteroid field," she commanded. "You were watching?" Jake asked without surprise. "I wondered who had such advanced stealth technology. That was a difficult situation, but we found a way through it." "We usually do. Your engines should have failed. Your improvised repairs should not have worked. Your navigation through that asteroid corridor was mathematically impossible. How did you succeed when physics said you should die?" Jake shrugged as if the answer was obvious. "We needed to survive, so we found a way to survive. That is what humans do when facing problems. We refuse to accept that problems cannot be solved." Queen Zareth stared at this unremarkable-looking creature, who had just explained the most profound concept she had ever encountered. He was describing the mythical peak, not as some advanced evolutionary state, but as a simple choice. The choice to never give up, no matter what the universe threw at you. "What if I told you that my empire plans to conquer all human worlds?" she asked. "Then I would ask why," Jake replied. "What do you hope to gain by ruling over people who do not want to be ruled?" The question hung in the crystal air between them, while Queen Zareth realized that this conversation was going to change everything. She believed about power and strength and the true meaning of evolution. Lisa Carter's hands moved across her makeshift engineering workstation while radiation alarms screamed in the background and sweat stung her eyes. She had been awake for 36 hours, straight rebuilding their fusion reactor with materials that should never work together. Chunks of raw asteroid iron sat next to crystalline compounds that Jake's team had harvested from deep space, and somehow she was making them function as precision engine components. "Captain, the magnetic containment field is holding," she called. Out to Jake, who was still outside the ship welding support struts to their hull with nothing but emergency repair tools. I have no idea why, but the asteroid crystals are actually stabilizing the plasma flow better than our original components. Jake's voice crackled through the comm system from outside where he worked in his radiation-damaged spacesuit. How much longer do you need, Lisa? Give me 2 more hours to calibrate the power couplings, and we should have enough thrust to break free from the gravitational well. But Captain, your radiation exposure is off the charts. You need to get back inside before the suit fails completely. Not until this job is finished, Jake replied while sparks flew from his welding torch. Alex, how are those trajectory calculations coming? Dr. Alex Turner looked up from his physics console with bloodshot eyes and trembling hands. He had been running impossible equations for hours, trying to find a path through the shifting asteroid field that would not crush their ship. I have a solution, but it requires split-second timing and perfect engine control. We will have exactly 17 seconds to execute a spiral maneuver between 3 massive asteroids while the gravitational field fluctuates. If we miss the window by even 1 second, we get smashed into space dust. From her hidden observation, Post-Queen Zarath watched this display of human determination with growing fascination. She had expected these primitive mammals to die hours ago, but instead they continued working beyond all reasonable limits. Their bodies should have collapsed from radiation poisoning and exhaustion, but somehow they pushed through pain and fatigue, as if willpower alone could overcome the laws of biology. General Kethver, she said without taking her eyes off the human, Drama, scan their vital signs and tell me how these creatures are still functioning. The general manipulated his sensor controls and studied the data with confusion. Your Majesty, their biological readings make no sense. Their brain activity shows extreme stress and fatigue, but also something else. Some kind of neurological pattern we have never observed before. It is as if their minds are operating beyond normal parameters. Zarath leaned forward in her crystal throne as understanding began to dawn. They are refusing to acknowledge their limitations. Their consciousness is simply rejecting the concept of failure. Meanwhile, aboard the human ship, Jake Morrison finally returned from his spacewalk and collapsed into his captain's chair. His spacesuit was cracked and failing, and his face showed the pale signs of radiation sickness, but his eyes remained clear and determined. Status report, he said while Lisa ran medical scanners over his damaged body. The good news is our engines will work, Lisa replied. The bad news is you have absorbed enough radiation to kill 3 people. You should be unconscious or dead, but somehow you are still giving orders. Jake waved away her medical concerns and focused on the tactical display. Alex, show me this escape route you calculated. The physicist transferred his data to the main screen and highlighted their proposed flight path through the asteroid field. It looked like threading a needle while riding a roller coaster during an earthquake. 3 massive asteroids would align for exactly 17 seconds, creating a narrow corridor to open space, but the timing had to be perfect. Lisa, can our patched-together engines handle that kind of precision maneuvering? Jake asked. Captain, I rebuilt our fusion reactor using materials I found floating in space and held together with emergency welds. By every law of engineering, this thing should explode the moment we fire it up. But if it works at all, it should give us the power we need. Jake nodded and stood up from his chair, despite his obvious exhaustion. Then we are going to make it work. Everyone strap in and prepare for emergency acceleration. We have one chance to get this right. The human crew secured themselves, while their captain took manual control of the ship. Jake's hands moved over the flight controls with the steady precision of someone who refused to consider the possibility of failure. The makeshift engines came online with a low rumble that shook the entire vessel. Queen Zarath watched with breathless attention as the human ship began its impossible escape attempt. The first asteroid loomed ahead like a mountain of rock and metal spinning slowly through space. The second asteroid approached from the side while gravitational forces pulled everything toward the dying star. The third asteroid tumbled end over, and directly in their path, creating a gap that opened and closed like the jaws of some cosmic predator. "Now," Jake whispered and fired the engines at full power. Discovery shot forward through space on a trail of superheated plasma. Jake rolled the ship 90 degrees to slip past the first asteroid with meters to spare. He cut power and used momentum to coast toward the narrow gap between the second and third rocks, while Alex counted down the seconds until the window closed forever. 15 seconds, Alex called out. 14. 13. The ship twisted through space in a maneuver that pushed the laws of physics to their breaking point. Jake fired the engines in short bursts to adjust their trajectory, while enormous asteroids spun past their viewports close enough to touch. 10 seconds. 9. 8. A chunk of debris struck their hull, and alarms sounded as their makeshift repairs began to fail. Lisa rerouted power from life support to keep the engines running while the ship bucked and shuddered under impossible stresses. 5 seconds. 4. 3. Jake pulled back on the controls, and the Discovery shot through the gap between asteroids with barely a meter of clearance on either side. They burst into open space just as the massive rocks crashed, together behind them sealing the passage forever. The bridge erupted in cheers and exhausted laughter as the crew realized they had survived. Their patched-together ship limped away from the asteroid field while the dying star pulsed with radiation that could no longer reach them. But Queen Zarath sat in stunned silence aboard her hidden flagship. She had just witnessed something that should have been impossible. A primitive species with weak bodies and short lifespans had overcome certain death through nothing more than determination and refusal to accept defeat. "Your Majesty, General," Kethvar said with his skin flickering confused colors. "Shall we destroy them now? They are damaged and defenseless. It would be simple to finish what the asteroid field could not." Zarat H. raised one slender hand to silence him. Her mind raced as she tried to process what she had observed. These humans had demonstrated something beyond superior genetics or advanced technology. They had shown the ability to transcend their own limitations through pure force of will. "No," she said quietly, "we will not destroy them. Not yet. I want to study these creatures further. They have shown me something I did not expect to find in this galaxy." "What is that, Your Majesty?" Zarath's skin shifted to deep, thoughtful blue as she contemplated the ancient texts about the mythical peak. "They have shown me that the old stories might be true, that evolution is not about perfection, but about the capacity to grow beyond what you are." The human ship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying its crew to safety, while Queen Zarath began to plan a series of tests that would push human capabilities even further. She needed to understand if what she had witnessed was unique to this one crew, or if it represented something fundamental about human nature. The galaxy's most powerful predator had become fascinated by what appeared to be its weakest prey, and that fascination would soon change everything. Captain Jake Morrison stared at the red warning lights flashing across his command console and felt sweat drip down his face despite the cooling systems working at maximum power. The U.E.'s Discovery shuddered as another asteroid scraped against their weakening shields, and the radiation readings from the dying star climbed higher every minute. "Captain, the engine core is overheating again," called out Lisa Carter from the engineering station. Her voice stayed calm, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. "We have maybe 20 minutes before complete system failure, and then we lose life support." Jake wiped his forehead with his sleeve and looked around the small bridge at his crew of 11 other people. They were scientists and engineers who had signed up for a peaceful research mission to study mineral formations in asteroid Fields. None of them had expected to face death in the cold vacuum of space, surrounded by spinning rocks and deadly radiation. Dr. Alex Turner looked up from his physics calculations with exhaustion written across his face. The gravitational field is pulling us deeper into the asteroid cluster every hour. Even if we could repair the engines, we would need 3 times our maximum power output to escape. The math simply does not work. The bridge fell silent except for the steady beeping of alarms and the groaning sound of metal under stress. Jake had been a military pilot before becoming an explorer, and he had faced death before, but never like this. In combat, there was always something you could do, some enemy to fight or strategy to try. Here they were trapped by the basic laws of physics, and those laws did not care about human courage or determination. From her hidden position in space, Queen Zareth watched the human bridge through her advanced sensors and waited for the familiar pattern of species facing inevitable doom to begin. She had seen it countless times. First, a panic would set in as they realized their situation was hopeless. Then they would waste precious time and energy on impossible schemes. Finally, they would break down into despair and spend their last hours in grief and regret. But something strange happened instead. Jake Morrison stood up from his captain's chair and walked to the center of the bridge with steady steps. His voice carried no trace of panic when he spoke. "All right, everyone listen up. We have a problem, and we are going to solve it. I do not care what the math says or how impossible it looks. We are not dying here today. Lisa, I need you to tell me exactly what is wrong with our engines. Alex, I need new calculations that assume we will find a way to get more power. Everyone else start thinking about what materials we can harvest from these asteroids." Zareth leaned forward in her crystal throne with surprise flickering across her features. This was not the response she expected from a doomed crew. The human captain showed no signs of accepting defeat, even though his situation was mathematically hopeless. Lisa Carter ran her hands through her brown hair and stared at her engineering displays. "The problem is the radiation from that star. It is cooking our fusion reactor and causing microfractures in the containment field. We keep losing plasma, and the magnetic bottles cannot hold steady. Even if I could fix the current damage, we would just break down again in a few hours. Then we fix it permanently," Jake said, as if the solution was obvious. "What would you need to make repairs that could handle this level of radiation? Captain, you do not understand. I would need materials that do not exist on this ship. Heavy metal shielding that we do not carry. Crystalline matrix compounds that would take weeks to synthesize in a proper laboratory. Components that cost more than our entire research budget." Jake nodded and looked out the main view screen at the asteroid field spinning around them. Rocks the size of mountains tumbled through space in slow motion, while smaller debris created clouds of metallic dust that sparkled in the red light of the dying star. "Those asteroids out there," he said, pointing at the display. "What are they made?" "Oh?" Dr. Alex Turner pulled up his geological survey data with shaking hands. "Mixed composition. Iron and nickel mostly, but also platinum deposits and rare earth elements. Some of the larger asteroids show signs of crystalline formations deep in their cores. Lisa, what if we could harvest materials directly from the asteroids? Could you build what we need?" The chief engineer stared at Jake as if he had lost his mind. "Captain, we do not have mining equipment. We do not have spacesuits rated for that level of radiation. We do not have the tools to process raw asteroid material into precision components. And even if we had all of that, we do not have time. The whole process would take days or weeks under perfect conditions." Queen Zareth watched this exchange with growing fascination. The humans faced impossible odds, but their captain refused to acknowledge the impossibility. Instead of wasting time on despair, he was pushing his crew to find solutions that did not exist. Jake Morrison walked to the equipment locker and started pulling out emergency spacesuits. Then we improvise. Alex calculate which asteroids have the materials Lisa needs and plot a course to reach them. Lisa start designing modifications using whatever we can salvage. Everyone else suit up because we are going outside. Captain, this is suicide, Dr. Turner protested. The radiation levels will kill us in minutes. Those spacesuits are not designed for EVA work in this environment. Then we work fast, Jake replied while checking the seals on his helmet. Failure is not an option. We have people depending on us back home, and I am not letting them down because the universe decided to throw us a curveball. Zara found herself gripping the arms of her throne as she watched the humans prepare for what should have been a meaningless gesture. No species could survive direct exposure to that level of cosmic radiation. No primitive tools could process asteroid materials into precision components. No 12-person crew could accomplish in hours what should take industrial facilities months to complete. But the humans began their impossible task anyway. Jake Morrison led a team of 6 people out of the ship in improvised radiation suits, while Lisa Carter and the others remained on board to prepare for repairs that should not be possible. Zareth watched through her sensors as the humans jetted through space toward a massive iron asteroid that registered lethal radiation levels on every scanner. The human crew worked with desperate efficiency. They used emergency cutting tools to slice chunks of metal from the asteroid's surface. They collected samples of rare minerals with nothing more than sample containers meant for laboratory work. They crawled through asteroid caves in search of crystalline deposits while their radiation detectors screamed warnings. Jake Morrison stayed outside longer than anyone else. His suit readings showed radiation exposure that should have killed him twice over, but he continued working. He directed his team to harvest specific materials that Lisa needed while calculating flight paths between asteroids and coordinating with the crew still aboard the ship. Dr. Alex Turner ran impossible calculations on asteroid trajectories and gravitational fields. Lisa Carter began rebuilding their fusion reactor using tools never designed for such work and materials that had never been tested in space. The rest of the crew processed raw asteroid samples into usable components with nothing but determination and improvised equipment. Hours passed while Zarath watched in growing amazement. The humans should have died from radiation poisoning. Their makeshift repairs should have failed catastrophically. Their improvised materials should have been worthless. But somehow they continued working, and their impossible plan began to take shape. The dying star pulsed with another wave of deadly energy, and the asteroid field shifted again. The human ship groaned under new stresses, while cosmic forces tried to tear it apart. But Jake Morrison and his crew refused to surrender to physics or fate or the hostile universe around them. They were proving something that Queen Zareth had never seen before, something that challenged everything she believed about strength and evolution and the nature of power itself. The crystal throne room aboard the Veltar flagship gleamed with soft blue light as Queen Zareth studied the holographic display floating before her. Her skin shifted from deep purple to silver as she watched the tactical information change and move across the 3-dimensional map. 17 star systems belonged to her empire now, and each one showed the same pattern of total surrender and complete control. She was beautiful in the way that predators are beautiful. Her body stretched tall and elegant with skin that looked like living crystal and eyes that held the cold light of distant stars. When she moved her hand, the air around it shimmered with psychic energy that could crush minds or bend reality to her will. Every being in the galaxy knew to fear the Veltar and their queen above all others. General Kethvar approached the throne with careful steps. His skin glowed a respectful pale green as he bowed low before speaking. "My queen, the final sector awaits your command." Only one small region remains unconquered in this part of the galaxy. Zarath turned her attention to the display and watched as it zoomed in on a cluster of yellow stars. "Show me these worlds that dare to exist without our rule." The hologram shifted to reveal a dozen systems with primitive space stations and basic mining operations scattered between them. "They call themselves humans, Your Majesty. A young species that only achieved faster than light travel 50 years ago. They are mammals with short lifespans and weak bodies. Their technology is crude and their numbers are small." Another general named Vordon stepped forward with his skin flashing orange with excitement. "They will fall within days, my queen. Perhaps hours. They have no psychic abilities and no real weapons that could harm our ships. It will be like crushing insects beneath our feet." Zareth studied the tactical data with growing boredom. These humans seemed even more pathetic than most species they had conquered. No natural armor or claws. No mental powers or energy manipulation abilities. They lived barely 100 years and spent most of that time struggling just to survive. On their simple worlds. "Tell me about their military response when other species have attacked them," she said. Kethvar manipulated the display to show recent battle reports. "They fight with determination, Your Majesty, but they lack the strength to matter. When the Zephyrian raiders attacked their outer colonies, the humans lost 3 ships for every one enemy vessel they destroyed. When the crystalline hive tried to harvest their mining stations, the humans managed to evacuate most civilians, but lost all their infrastructure. They survived through retreat and hiding rather than true victory." The queen leaned back in her throne and felt the familiar weight of absolute power settling around her shoulders. For 3,000 years, the Veltar had swept across the galaxy, like a tide of crystal and starlight. Every species fell before them because the Veltar were perfect. They had evolved beyond the weaknesses that plagued lesser beings. Their minds could bend space and time. Their bodies were nearly immortal. Their technology had reached heights that other species could barely imagine. But sometimes in the quiet moments between conquests, Zareth remembered the old texts from their home world. Ancient stories spoke of something called the Peak, not a place or a thing, but a state of being that transcended normal evolution. The texts described creatures who could overcome any obstacle, not through superior genetics or advanced technology, but through something the ancient writers called pure will. Most Veltar scholars dismissed the Peak as mythology, a fairy tale, invented by primitive ancestors who did not yet understand the true nature of evolutionary superiority. But Zareth had always wondered if there might be truth hidden in those old stories. The texts claimed that beings who reached the Peak could adapt to any environment and solve any problem and achieve things that should be impossible. She had conquered species with natural armor that could deflect plasma weapons. She had defeated civilizations with technology that bent reality itself. She had crushed empires that spanned thousands of worlds. But she had never encountered anything that resembled the mythical Peak. Every species followed the same pattern when faced with Veltar superiority. First they tried to fight. Then they tried to negotiate. Finally, they surrendered and accepted their new role as subjects of the Empire. "Your Majesty," Vordon said with his skin pulsing eager red, "shall we begin the invasion immediately? My fleets are ready to jump to human space and begin orbital bombardment of their military installations." Zareth raised one slender hand to stop him. Something about these humans intrigued her, though she could not say exactly what. Perhaps it was their obvious weakness that made her curious. How did such fragile creatures manage to survive in a galaxy full of predators? Most species this primitive had been wiped out by natural disasters or stronger neighbors long before achieving space travel. "We will observe them first," she decided. "I want to see how these humans behave when facing impossible odds. Monitor their communications, and watch for opportunities to study them under pressure. Both generals looked confused, but neither dared question their queen's commands. Keffer bowed again and said, "As you wish, your majesty. Shall we maintain our cloaked position at the edge of their territory?" "Yes, but also scan for any human vessels that might be in distress. If we find them struggling against natural disasters or equipment failures, we will observe their response. I want to understand what keeps this species alive when they should have died out long ago." The bridge crew immediately began scanning human space with their advanced sensors. Within hours, they detected something interesting. A human research vessel had become trapped in a dangerous asteroid field near a dying red giant star. The gravitational forces were pulling the ship deeper into the field, while radiation from the star damaged their systems. Zareth studied the tactical display with growing interest. The human ship called U.S. Discovery carried only 12 crew members and had been conducting some kind of scientific survey when the asteroid field shifted unexpectedly. Their engines were failing, and their communications were blocked by electromagnetic interference from the dying star. "They have perhaps 6 hours before the radiation kills them," Kethvo reported. Even if their engines were working perfectly, they lacked the power to escape the gravitational well. Their nearest rescue ships are weeks away and have no way to reach them in time. This was exactly what Zareth wanted to see. Humans facing certain death with no possible escape and no help coming. She had watched hundreds of species die in similar situations, and the pattern was always the same. First panic and desperate attempts to find impossible solutions, then bargaining with fate or their gods for miraculous salvation. Finally, acceptance and resignation as they prepared for inevitable death. "Position our ship where we can observe without being detected," she commanded. "I want to record everything. How do these weak mammals face their doom? Do they fight uselessly against fate, or do they surrender with dignity? This will tell us everything we need to know about human nature before we conquer their worlds." The Veltar flagship moved silently through space, using technology that bent light and energy around its hull. They positioned themselves perfectly to watch the human drama unfold while remaining completely invisible to primitive human sensors. Zareth settled back in her crystal throne and prepared to witness what she expected would be a typical display of inferior species behavior. She had no idea that she was about to observe something that would challenge everything she believed about strength and evolution and the true meaning of power. The mythical peak that she had wondered about for centuries was about to be revealed not as ancient legend, but as living reality. The dying human ship drifted deeper into the asteroid field while cosmic forces gathered to crush it, and Zareth watched with the patient interest of a predator studying prey that did not yet know it was already dead.